Drifts towards Yao. Heads it across. Pebble! What a finish! Ford still moving forward. It's Ashton Morgan in close! Here's Yao looking for Burgess. It's two! Deflected! What a stop from Ingham! And the finish from West Timoteo! There's the pass. The post at the back is where we find Sam Salter. That's a pretty good ball. It's on Salter! What a finish that is!
There's a strike from well out from Sergio Camargo. Head down, Pulse with an acrobatic shot. It's off the foot of Mason Trafford and into the back of the net. Valor with a chance here, and it's into the back of the net.
Special Thursday edition of the CanPL.ca Newsroom, and with that, the Mitchell Tierney, Charlie O'Connor-Clark dynamic duo is back to take you through the week.
Boy.
And a bit that was in the Canadian Premier League. Ahead on today's show, we'll talk about bicycle kicks, Cavalry's rise to the top of the table, the Canadian U20 national team, and plenty more. We'll also be joined by York United president and GM Angus McNabb to discuss a monumental move for the club as they confirm the transfer of Diyaeddine Abzi to France. But before we get to all that, there have been 5 matches for you guys in the league since the last time we spoke, and we'll run through them for you quickly. This past weekend on Saturday, Cavalry defeating Halifax 1-0 courtesy of an Airbin Pebble volley, while Forge delivered a dominant performance at home on Sunday against Pacific, winning 3-0. Tuesday saw a 0-0 draw between Atletico Ottawa and York, as well as a Samuel Salter double to give Halifax the win over Edmonton 2-1 at Clark Stadium. And finally, last night, Cavalry go top of the table with a 4-2 win against Valor. And Charlie, yet another week where we see some incredible goals, plenty of goals in general in the Canadian Premier League. But us, in our infinite wisdom, have chosen to start with Atletico Ottawa versus York, the 0-0 draw of the week. And, again, draw being the opportune word. 8 times now after 9 matches between these two sides in all competitions, it's ended tied after 90 minutes. Nate Ingham said post-game that maybe next time the league just calls them and they split the points and don't end up playing the match. But I think that would do a disservice because these have been games that have been very entertaining and very different each time they've been played.
Yeah, that's kind of the weird thing is how different they've been, and they've still all ended up in draws, right? I think we've had 0-0s like this. We've had kind of closer ones where there's a goal right at the end to save a point for a team. We've had games with goals early and often. It's weird. These teams are just they both make it so hard to play against them. They're so difficult to beat and to break down. And I think that's been a hallmark of both York and Ottawa this season for the first kind of third of the year. I guess we're through now. So I guess it kind of makes sense that there'd be, little to separate them. And in games like these, you need either a mistake or a moment of kind of individual magic quality to break through. And I guess we didn't necessarily have the one of those that either team needed to get 3 points in this one, as has been kind of the case in recent matches between them. But again, still, it's an entertaining one. There's chances of both sides. There's plenty of drama and controversy towards the end there. As if you're watching on the video show, you'll see right now on screen with the red cards coming up. It's an entertaining one and a very important point, I think, again for both sides, who will probably be fairly happy with that kind of result from a game like this going forward, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 straight matches now without a goal for York United, and that continues to plague them, certainly, as they slip down the table a little bit. But let's hear from Martin Nash after the game on what he thought was a fantastic performance, but missing a goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been a consistent theme for us, to be fair, our defensive shape. We've, I think that's our 4th clean sheet in 10 games, which is pretty good. So, we limited to minimal amount of chances. I think they maybe 1 shot on target, and I think it was from range. So I thought we did a good job in that area. They're a tough team to play against. Obviously, they don't give a lot away, and they've had the ability. They have some guys that are dangerous and have the ability to score. So, yeah, I'm proud of the effort my group gave today, and couldn't ask for anything more except goal.
I mean, looking at York, it's crazy. Like, I think it's adding this past game. I think it's 6 now. They've underperformed their expected goals by 6. What is it about this York attack that needs to start clicking? I mean, they have all the talent. They seem to be able to generate chances, but once again, I mean, a brilliant save from Nate Ingham, but you've got to start burying eventually.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, York have kind of had to try a few different options in the attack this season. They've had different players come through there. Obviously, they would have hoped that Austin Ricci would be a part of it, but he's gone down to injury. Lowell Wright is with the under-20s at the moment. So they bring in Hernandez, who's still getting accustomed to the side, and Lisandro Cabrera as well. Asazi Di Rosario has, maybe overthinking a few things a little bit recently with some chances that have come to him that he would normally put in the back of the net and even would have earlier in the season. So that's in theory and hopefully something that they'll work out quite soon. Again, there's when you have a new coach with a lot of players that haven't necessarily played a lot of actual minutes together, they train together, but they haven't played minutes on the pitch in a match together, then those things do take time. And I think the solace, as Martin Nash kind of alluded to there, is that they're still not really conceding a lot of goals. They're still defending very well, and they're holding the ball and they're getting it to those areas. It's just that last little bit. And I know it's kind of frustrating to repeat it so many times, but there's that little bit that's not clicking, right? Whether you need, these players to kind of stay in these positions and to keep working with something that hasn't been scoring just until it comes off, or whether you need, a slight change, a little tweak here and there. I think that, again, the foundation is in place for York.
Yeah, and I think that foundation is critical. And obviously, another game where defensively so solid. Like Atletico Ottawa have, I think this is only the second time they've been held goalless all season, and only one shot on target. And one thing they did especially well was just, I mean, Bassett didn't have much of the ball. Blue Tabla barely touched the ball. Like, they were able to really shut down those key guys. And I think by and large, like, another fantastic performance after figuring it out too. I mean, early on in that match, I think it was 3 times in the first 10 minutes, the Ottawa press forces them to turn over the ball, and all of a sudden you're concerned that, oh, this might be a long one for York, and Ottawa's looking like their old selves. But yeah, it was really good for at the back of those veteran defenders adjust again. And let's hear from one of them, is Jordan Wilson's thoughts on the match.
Yeah, it's been great. I feel like we feel like we've been cheated a little bit in our previous games because we maybe gave a half chance. Like last week, I gave a pen away. That's the only chance that they really had, Halifax. Even tonight, we just said we just need to lock up shop even that much more, 5% more, and we'll hold them to 0. And that's what we did. Now the other end is just we need to be clinical and punish teams because not many teams score on us. We have the best record. Goals against for the season so far. We just really need to find a little bit of spark on the offensive end.
And on the Ottawa side of things, just a game where they didn't play particularly well, at least up to their recent standard. But they mentioned after the game just how important it was that they still were able to pick up a point. All of a sudden, their unbeaten streak stays together, and in a long season, these 1 points, as small as they are in a fine margins league like the Canadian Premier League, picking them up is still incredibly important. And let's hear from their coach, Carlos Gonzalez, on his thoughts on the match.
Yeah, the reality is that there is a phrase in Spanish that says, "The day that you cannot win, don't lose." So today I think that we can put that phrase on the table. I think that it's a point that we can continue adding. And of course there are a lot of things that we can improve, but also the reality is that the last 15 minutes were tough minutes, and it was a good point at the end.
Yeah, that's something that we've spoken about, I think, at other times this year with other teams. I think we spoke about it with Pacific earlier this year. We'll get to them later, but good teams find ways, even when they're not playing at their best, to get a point, to get something out of a game, right? They find a way, and I think that's kind of something that Ottawa are evolving into. They're a good team that, when they're not playing very well, that things aren't going their way in a game, they still manage to get something out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that good teams do is attract international interest in their players, and that's something that we continue to see in the Canadian Premier League. And with York United, something we saw this week is Diyaeddine Abzi. He's moving to Ligue 2 in France to join Pau FC, who finished 10th last year in the table. Leaves with 74 appearances for York, 8 goals and 9 assists, and he'll be joining them after the match against the Vancouver Whitecaps. So that's good for the club, I guess, that they get to keep him around for that match, and good for the club that, obviously they're attracting this sort of interest and seeing a player, move to a very good level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's massive for the club, for the player. Abzi is a guy that's been at York since day one, pretty much, since the very first year of the Canadian Premier League. He's the club's all-time appearances leader. He's probably up there in goals and assists for the team. Just been one of the top and most consistent, most entertaining players in the league for so long now, right? And it's just so impressive and such a definite testament to what he's done in the CPL, what he's done with York for so long, that he sticks to this project. He commits to it through really several generations of this York team, and he gets that big move that he's obviously wanted for quite a while. And I think it's a very good one for him. Ligue 2 is a very, very high quality league in its own right, and it's a league that has a very high level where hopefully he'll be able to contribute. But it's not just that, right? It's a league that can maybe be another stepping stone for him, right? Ligue 2 is, as kind of Angus McNabb says in his press release here, it's one of the most scouted leagues in the world, right? It's certainly not out of the question that, you play well there, you catch the attention of even a Ligue 1 team, and then all of a sudden you're marking Lionel Messi twice a year, right? So it's kind of crazy, but these are the things that you think about. And obviously York United have said that they've got a sell-on fee as well, or a sell-on clause in this transfer. So that helps as well. And I think they'll definitely be wishing Abzi the best, and they'll be just kind of hoping that he puts in 2 more trademark performances in his last 2 games with this club before he moves on to this very well-deserved move.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you can only hope to mark Lionel Messi. So that could be an incredible. We'll see. We'll start in Ligue 2 for Abzi, and then but like you said, yeah, there's definitely it's definitely a great league to be in from that standpoint. So let's move on here to another match from the weekend, that being Forge Pacific. And again, if we want to talk about themes and things happening since the start of the season, since the start of the league history, Forge once again looking like their old selves. A big win against Pacific, and Forge has kind of had to wait in the weeds a little bit while we've talked about Pacific, we've talked about Cavalry, we've talked about Ottawa. They haven't played as much. They started the season a little slow. But now with games in hand, they're starting to really quickly move up the table.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And those games in hand are very deceptive because they've got so many fewer games played than I think most of the table, and certainly the teams above them. So they've absolutely never really been out of it, but they certainly are not now. They're playing easily their best football of the year. This was kind of a statement game for them at home against Pacific to kind of remind everybody who Forge are and what they're able to do against a team that's unbelievably talented, has been very good to start the season, but has undeniably been kind of struggling the past few games, past few weeks. So this is a pretty interesting tide turner, I think, in sort of the narrative of this CPL season.
Well, let's turn the tide of this show here and bring on Benedict Rhodes, always an entertaining guest. Benny, thanks for joining us. Let's just get your thoughts on again, Forge picking up another huge result in the Canadian Premier League and really starting to once again look like maybe the favorites. That probably them and Cavalry at the moment.
Yeah, he said they're in good form at the moment. Obviously, building on a huge performance against Toronto FC. Of course, that was always going to be a game where they took something out of. And this man right here, Ashton Morgan, he's in top form at the moment. That left side of him and Tristan Borges has been pretty good. I think Borges has 5 goals in his last 3 games now, and it seems like a lot of Forge players at the moment are kind of hitting their stride at the same time, which is kind of a dangerous thought considering they're already near the top of the table and now they're getting better. Here's another one, David Chouanier and Abubakar Sissoko. Or these two players are, are finding their good form. Sissoko is playing as a midfielder now, finally, after starting the season as a right back. And they're just firing all cylinders at the moment. And like you said, they have 3 games in hand still over Pacific, I believe.
Yeah, don't look now, but Tristan Borges is 1 goal back of the Golden Boot lead. This was just such a kind of trademark Forge performance to come out with such a clear tactical plan. They wanted to press so high, right? They really put Pacific under pressure. I think really both of their early goals kind of come from winning the ball, especially the first one where I think it's Sissoko or possibly Hijabrapor that wins the ball off a Jamar Dixon pass, and they play it immediately through. They find the right runner into the box, and it's a good finish. But I think maybe more impressive to me, I don't know if I'll just see if you guys agree with this, but just the way that they're able to sort of mark Pacific's best players out of this game. Right, Mark Boost.
I think Charlie's Wi-Fi might have marked him out of this show, but Benny, while Charlie subs out there for a second, I guess just picking up on that point, Forge's ability. I mean, we saw it against Toronto FC, their ability to really key in on other teams' best players.
Yeah, definitely. We saw against Toronto FC as well. The other Alejandro Pozuelo, and this game was Diaz. They're forcing them to come deeper to try to get the ball and try to just do anything. And unfortunately for Pacific, that kind of took Diaz out of the box where he needed to be the poacher that we know he can be. Obviously, he had a couple of good chances in this game. The one where he kind of dribbled through and Tristan Henry made a huge stop, as we saw in the highlights there. And again, in the second half where he kind of skied over the bar. But they really miss Benny Aparicio, right? Like he does a lot of this work for them. Kind of allows Diaz to be that guy who can play as a poacher and score the goals. But like Ashton Morgan, like this, he's an MLS caliber left back playing in the CPL, right? Like he's very, very good for this league.
Yeah, let's hear from Ashton Morgan now on his thoughts on his goal and the hard work from Forge during this match.
Yeah, honestly, pretty sure we lost the ball, but then the reaction from all the guys that surrounded and hunted again, led to the goal. We were all on the front foot for a good portion of that game, and basically it's on the front foot, and we got rewarded for the hard work we do off the ball.
And there he returns, Mr. Charlie O'Connor Clark. Thanks for rejoining us.
Way too often. I bet I was making a really good point too. That sucks.
Yeah, it's funny how all your good points seem to come when
they all come off camera. That's fine.
Yeah. But Charlie, maybe one for you here. You mentioned this. The way that Forge starts this game and the way that they pick up the tempo at home, how important is that against a Pacific side that would have been hungry to again, with having dipped in results recently, to show what they can do against the traditional big team in the Canadian Premier League?
Yeah, it's massive, especially when you consider sometimes this hasn't been how Forge has started games. Like, remember in Edmonton, they go down quite early in that game, I think, and it's not the start they want, and they have to kind of build their way back from it. But for them to come out against the first place team, a team that's started the season better than anybody in the CPL, and just press them high and put them under pressure and really force them backwards really whenever they have the ball, is just so impressive from Forge. And naturally when you go up by 2, you back off the press a little bit at the end of the first half, but then in the second half they're right back down their throats pretty much the whole game from there, to kind of make sure the Pacific can't find a foothold in this game, can't find a way back into it. And it's just kind of ruthless stuff from Forge to hunt for balls and to win them in midfield on the wings and play them almost immediately, quickly into those dangerous areas, and they end up in the back of the net fairly quickly. So it's very impressive. And again, I think Ashton Morgan talked about it as a statement game of getting back to Forge football, and I think that's exactly what that was at home.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's quickly hear from Bobby Smirniotis, the Forge coach, on that statement performance.
Yeah, I thought it was very good. One thing we talked about is how good we were going to be in the first 15, 20 minutes and set the tempo and really try and impose ourselves on the game. And by the way the game went, we did a pretty good job at that. And I think, after that, it gave the guys a little bit more comfortability in where they needed to be and what they needed to do. Pacific had a little bit of the ball, which I think is normal after you score 2 goals in that first period. And after that, I think, we were very good. We saw where their pressure points were. We had talked about that before the game, whether they were high in a mid-block and where we wanted the ball to be moving and players to be moving, and the guys executed. So once you do that, if you've read the opponent well as a staff and as players, then things start becoming easier on the pitch.
Well, thanks for joining us, Benny. We'll make a quick swap here. Send out Benedict Rhodes, and we'll bring in from York United, Angus McNabb. Thank you so much for joining us here.
Hi guys. Sorry, bit of a chaotic one, but obviously I'm here in New York. It's the announcement of all things FIFA today, and so I've been running around and finally managed to find a hotel lobby to sit down and have a chat with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, exciting times for Canadian soccer, and certainly exciting times for York United as well, with the news around the move of Diyaeddine Abzi. Angus, I guess just what legacy does he leave behind as a player who was there from the very beginning, worked through many iterations of the club, and is still, a massive contributor to this day?
I think he leaves regardless of however things go next week in the Canadian Championship. He's made a mark. I think he's been, in my opinion, sort of one of the most exciting players that this league's had over the last couple of years. And he's a guy that we just want to now go on to see succeed and do phenomenally well.
Absolutely. I think, as we spoke about earlier, Diyaeddine Abzi, I think he's the all-time appearances leader for York. He's been, just such an important player for that club. And Angus, you've kind of spoken about it before, but this is a really, really good thing for you guys as a club and for the league as a whole, right? To see a young player come from lower levels into the Canadian Professional League and impress so consistently for so long and to impress clubs around the world, right? That's got to be great for you guys as a club and just for the league in general.
Yeah, he's earned this opportunity. It's great for us as a league, but for him personally, he's earned it. He deserves it. He's worked incredibly hard. He puts in a lot of work. When we look at our GPS data, in terms of high-speed meters run, it's normally him topping it week after week. And what he's done and put in for our football club, he deserves the chance. And I think it's the right club, the right level. He's going into an environment and a situation where they really, really wanted him. And this was some MLS interests, both Canadian MLS clubs, others in the States, some other clubs in the same division that he's gone to. And look, he deserves this chance. And I think he's gone, and it was up. I think I mentioned in some of the quotes, it was up to us to make this work with Pau because he really wanted it, and he deserves the chance to go where he wants to go and sort of further his career after what he's done for us as a football club.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a very good level, but he's a very good player. What is it about Diyaeddine's game that you think will make him successful in Europe?
I think we all know what he can do on the ball. He's up there with the absolute best in our competition, taking players on. His left foot and his delivery, when you look at, I think it's that goal in the bubble in Winnipeg, that sort of whipped ball in for Lowell to get on top of and like put a phenomenal header in. But like his ability to deliver from those wide positions is incredibly impressive. And I think he's going to now be challenged to sort of take people on and hit that byline a little bit more and do even more and keep progressing, keep going as a player. I think this season under Martin, our entire back four is something that's evolved. And I think the defensive side of his game has improved in this short period this year as well. So I think, look, he's got to go on, and it will be a challenge for him to go and contribute in a new environment. then cement starting place, and then become an absolute mainstay of that team and look for his next progression beyond Pau as well.
Yeah, I think the next progression beyond Pau is an interesting one as well. I just want to ask a little bit about kind of this level he's going to. He's got the technical quality, I think, which is important at that kind of level in those leagues in Europe. But Angus, you've mentioned this before. It's also a very heavily scouted league, right? And that's also kind of part of it that, hopefully he goes over there and impresses, and then maybe there's an even bigger move, a next step up for this young player, right?
Yeah, I mean, French League 2 has the Kante factor in terms of everyone knows the story of his recruitment, and sort of I think you speak to not just guys at Leicester City, but 50 scouts around England. He was top of everyone's list, but it's up to someone to pull the trigger on him. And that league in particular for the French top division, for the Premier League, for others, it tends to be on the younger side. He's in a younger team at Pau there as well. So people look at it, people watch it, and I think he's got a real opportunity to go succeed and excel there.
And speaking of an opportunity to go and excel, another one of your players, Lowell Wright, getting called up for the Canadian U20 team. A massive opportunity for him. And also, what does that mean for, or what has the league kind of meant for those Canadian youth national teams? Because I can't remember the last time a player has come in with, about 42 games of pro experience to play for the Canadian youth national teams as Lowell does. And that's a big thing for the team.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's massive, and I think it's something that it's not going to be an anomaly. We want it to be the norm in terms of look, we're looking at an under-20s team and a kid with 40 plus professional appearances. That's actually, in terms of in Europe, that can be the norm for each national team playing at this level will have one of those guys playing at that level. That's the norm. And we've got the opportunity with our commitment to under 21 minutes to actually make this not an anomaly. We should have 5 Lowell Wrights on every roster between now and 2026 and even more beyond that, because we've got the opportunity to give these guys first team minutes, develop and do something. For Lowell, this is a big tournament. As you say, he's got those professional appearances under his belt. He turns 19 in the summer in August, which is just ridiculous when I think about it, even just having known him for the last few years and everything there, that he's still not 19 years old. But he's got a real opportunity. And look, we've just moved Abzi. Lowell's had some pretty considerable interest, and we've had some discussions on him with clubs in the last couple of weeks in various areas of Europe, in Scandinavia, in sort of Germany with Bundesliga development teams and things there. So, look, it's a real platform for Lowell. And with what he's done already, and with ultimately the success of Canadian men's national teams, this is a huge opportunity for him and for all of the guys in that squad. And it's great that the Canadian Premier League have 6 players who've seen league action this year in it. And I think we're going to look to absolutely increase that year on year as this program goes. And not just for Lowell, this under-20s group. I mean, if these guys qualify, that opens up the Max Ferraris, Isaiah Johnson, Cedric Toussaints, who right now are in a bit of limbo because of COVID and everything else. There's not a 23s program of competitive games that they walk into unless the under-20s perform. So there are sort of beyond this for us, and where we look at it, Osaze fits into that group as well now. But there is real opportunity and real significance. It's not just this age group. It's this sort of 23s and that little sort of gap where those guys didn't have tournaments and things because of COVID, that they now sort of need their buddies to go and pull something out of the bag and do something special here, so that they have national programs to participate and play in as well.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting, maybe peculiarity of this particular under-20 tournament, right? For anybody who doesn't know, the semi-final, or I believe the finalists from this tournament go to the 2024 Olympics, which is an under-23 tournament, right? Not an under-21. Guys, you mentioned earlier just you guys as a club, your commitment specifically to to the under 21 minutes. You're at the moment well ahead of the rest of the pack. You're the first team to pass that 2,000 minute mark. It's been important to this club, I think, for a long time. But when the other younger players on your side see, things like Diyaeddine getting his move or Lowell getting these call-ups, it's got to be encouraging for them, right, to see, that people are watching, right, that there are those opportunities. And then even for the future, when there's other players that are interested in playing for York and other players that you might want to recruit, this is all kind of something that can snowball, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, when you've got players moving out, you've got roster space that's created, and people want to go where, yes, success on the field and winning. And I think the guys at Forge have done a good job with that. Pacific have done a good job with that, with some of their recruitment as well, and guys coming in. Winning helps because you get access to continental competition, but also with your recruitment, moving players on helps. And obviously when you have players move out, whether it's injury or whether it is sell on, there's movement back in to the club. And we'll have some news on that in terms of some movement inside and some guys coming into the club now to bolster things with this over the next couple of weeks. One of which is, I think, a really, really great high potential young Canadian who's coming back to Canada to play for us. And we'll hopefully get that one announced tomorrow, but also some international players who moves like this shine a light on us as a stepping stone and a platform, and that people are watching our club, and that's fantastic.
Angus, just very, very quickly before we let you go, a big match coming up for you guys. Obviously not overlooking the Pacific one, but against Vancouver in the Canadian Championship semifinals. What did you guys maybe learn from the match against Toronto FC last year? But also, this a crazy run, honestly, that it's been so far with the 2 penalty shootout wins.
Yeah, it's funny actually. Obviously the drama at the end in Pacific. I was really, really happy that obviously we got by in penalties, mainly because Amir Didic will hate me for this because it's probably the goal of his career. It's offside. There's a player in front of Nico that steps over the ball, so it shouldn't have been given. So there's that bit there. So we would have felt a bit hard done by if we hadn't gone through. But look, it's been a wild ride in terms of like the game in Ottawa. Shock horror, a draw against Ottawa, and then we sneak through on penalties. And then the game against Pacific, I think, unusual situation, playing them Friday, Tuesday in that little window as well. So it's really exciting going into the game in Vancouver next week, but there is no eyes off sort of Pacific at the weekend, mainly because we're thin right now in terms of like the injuries, and while we've got Max coming back and things there, it has been quite attritional this period so far, and no massive reason for it other than I think guys are getting their bodies used to this rhythm again. Last year nobody trained much. It was sort of your midweek weekend football, and so the change of that rhythm again after a pretty long off season and inactivity, it's challenging. And then we also didn't have a great pre-season of preparation with a couple of COVID cases through the squad, a couple of injuries that meant someone like Mateo Hernandez is really only just settling in now, having got his concussion in pre-season and then his suspension. And then you've got Lissandro coming in. So we've got to find a bit of rhythm. And but really, really happy with the way the group is progressing. The defensive record is something that the guys are rightfully very proud of. And it's up to us now to try and flick the switch on the other end of the field as well and go into a massive week for us as a club. And really quite proud to represent this league in the sort of the Final Four here, the semi-finals.
Yeah, absolutely. A massive... like you said, a massive week for the club and a massive day for Canadian soccer as you know, the draw today. So, the venues announced today. So enjoy that. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, well, we'll say goodbye to Angus McNabb and bring on Alexandre Conguet-Huzek to get his thoughts on everything Edmonton Halifax. A very interesting game. Alex, Edmonton has to win at some point, don't they? Like it's 2 weeks now where it just seemed like the Hollywood story was going to happen, and they just weren't able to get it done.
Yeah, Edmonton's playing some. Maybe not just getting the results that they desire. I mean, it was tough to watch for the first 55 minutes. They were all over Halifax. They were dominant in the first half. They were racking up chance after chance. Some of them were just they got the 1-0, and then there were some chances where they were so close to get the 2-0 in the first half. Then in the second half, they even had a 3-on-1 right when it was 1-0, and then 5-10 minutes later, it was 2-1 Halifax, all because a bit of a Sam Salter magic. So it's really unfortunate for Edmonton, because you look, it's like Alan Koch said. He said this was the most frustrating result of them all, just because his team played so well and looked to be the better team for most of the night, but 5-10 minutes cost them, and that's just the reality of this sport. You have to be, on from minute 1 to minute 90 to get a result. And I mean, I guess in Halifax's case, if everything goes right, you only need 5-10 minutes. But Edmonton right now is the process is coming together, but it's everything but the results, especially on a game like this.
Yeah, it's certainly deflating, I think, to be so close to lead for quite a while in this game, and then all of a sudden I think it's 2 goals and what is it, like not even 10 minutes, and suddenly they're on the back foot and they're losing, and it's kind of a that familiar feeling again, which is unfortunate for a young team who is looking for kind of points to build around. But I think just if we stay on Edmonton for a couple seconds here, Alex, just maybe we can get a little more specific into the kind of football they've been playing, the improvements that we're seeing from them, because, they started the season, they played in this very, very conservative kind of back 5 sort of formation, and they made it very difficult for other teams to break them down. But we're seeing them maybe come out of their shell a little bit more recently. You mentioned Mamadi Kamara, obviously, as a player who, is kind of a focal point in the attack. He can hold the ball up. He can score them himself. Just what are you seeing from the way that this Edmonton side has kind of changed and improved over, the couple months of this season?
Yeah, it's been quite impressive to see, because they started the year, like you mentioned, very, the 5-3-2 was defensive. It was try to get the wingbacks up the pitch, try to get something going in midfield, but it was mostly direct, and then play it forward. And then we saw the evolution of the 4-4-2. So it's like, okay, they're still defending, but an extra body in attack, try to get things going that way. And now we've kind of seen this next evolution, and it all kind of begins with Mamadi Kamara up front. Absolutely. I mean, he's a midfielder by trade. It's someone I've been following for a while, back to his SFU days. Always been a very dominant midfielder. He got drafted into MLS for the San Jose Earthquakes back in the day, and then played in USL. He was playing the number 6 for Edmonton just a month ago, and then for whatever reason, Alan Koch, very familiar with Kamara, has worked with him for, I think it was almost 4 or 5 years. So it's a partnership that they've enjoyed the fruits of for a while, and just moves them up front. And now all of a sudden they look like a whole different team. But at the same time, I'm not that surprised. I mean, Edmonton has had the talent. We've seen what Tobias Warshewski has been doing, and he wasn't even in the lineup in this game. You see some of the players like Gabriel Bitar, what he's been able to do, Kamara, Shamit Shome back healthy, Wesley Timoteo has been a revelation. Kind of all the pieces were there, but they just kind of didn't have the system to suit them. All of a sudden, through Kamara up front, who kind of brings them in as a true hold-up striker, kind of shows attributes for a number 9. It feels like their offense is finally clicking, and there's possession patterns. There's confidence on the ball. There's holding up the ball in midfield and then playing it out wide. Whereas before it was just kind of hit and hope and maybe get the ball to Tobias Warshewski and let him do his thing. Whereas now there's a bit of a system, there's a bit of coherence, and it makes for a lot more smoother, fluid soccer, which I'm sure Alan Koch has been very pleased to see, as he mentioned.
Yeah, let's get the thoughts of FC Edmonton head coach Alan Koch after this one.
I thought we played well for the first 30 minutes. We probably should have been 3 or 4-0 up. And if you're 3 or 4-0 up at 30 minutes into the game, you're probably going to go win that game. I think a bit of naivety in final third moments disappointed us in the first 30 minutes. And then if you ever leave a good team, which every team that we play against in this league is a good team, you allow them hope and give Halifax credit. They were definitely the better team in the final 45 minutes.
Yeah, the better team in the final 45 for Halifax, and finally an away victory for Stephen Hart's side. It's been something they've been chasing for a long time. Alex, what did you make from their performance, and maybe specifically the play of Samuel Salter, who continues to, I think you did a great job in your analysis of highlighting, continues to play a somewhat unique position, but is doing so very, very well.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Halifax, maybe not the start they anticipated. It was a bit quiet, a bit flat. I mean, you could kind of tell they were missing Andrea Rampersad in midfield through suspension. But then once they started to grow, you could kind of see the pieces come together. Jeremy Gagnon-Lapare in the second half really, brought Marcelo Polisi around him, Pierre Lamoth. They started to grow from the game. And then it all kind of came together through Salter, like you mentioned. And I mean, we're going to have to coin the term. I think from a CPL perspective, I'm going to call it the Terran Campbell role, the kind of big man who's more of a number 9. You shuttle him out wide in a bit of a unique role. Also, if you want another Canadian perspective, we can call it the Kyle Laren role for Besiktas. I've been loving it because it's a great role in terms of you're a big number 9. Maybe there isn't room for you in the lineup, or you don't want someone like Salter. He's a big guy, but he isn't necessarily physical. He's not a guy who's going out there and wearing down defenders back to goal, battling for 50-50s all night long. Well, when you put him out in this bit of a wide forward role, it kind of allows you to escape that, but you're still in this position where you can kind of hide between the fullbacks and the center backs. Use your size in a mismatch over the fullbacks. It's really great for crosses. And I don't think there's any better example of that than the 2 goals. I mean, the first one, he just kind of glides into the box and everyone forgets that he's there at the back post. It's an easy tap in for Jeremy Gagnon-Lapare to find him for the goal. And then you look at the second goal, fantastic ball from Colin Gander, who finds him, but Salter's just in between everyone. He's kind of, the center backs kind of left him because they're like, okay, we don't have to worry about him. The fullbacks were way too wide, or the left back, sorry, in that case was too wide. Salter's just wide open in that channel. Top class finish from him. Don't get me wrong. Like, it was a very, very impressive finish, but he finds those sort of pockets that role allows it. And I think if you saw what Terran Campbell was able to do with Pacific last year, it's a role that's very useful if you can find a way to make the most of it. And I think Stephen Hart, considering that Salter's up to 4 goals now, 5 if you include the TFC game, he's been making the most of it.
Yeah, let's hear from Halifax coach Stephen Hart after this match.
Yeah, it was difficult. We knew that they were well rested, and when we're coming off of a game, in the first half we got scored on early, and it rattled us a bit. I thought we weren't cautious on the ball. We weren't accepting the responsibility to keep the ball, and we were really struggling in the first half. I think a little bit fortunate to come off 1-0, but much better second half, much better.
Well, thanks for joining us, Alex. Always great to get your insight on all things West Coast.
Awesome. Thanks.
Absolutely. Well, I think by and large, as we transition now to Halifax's other game of the week, I think they can actually be reasonably happy with how this road swing went. I mean, it was a tough loss, obviously, to Cavalry, but a game where, especially in the first half, I thought they were really, really good against a Cavalry side that, it's crazy that we're only 43 minutes into the show and we're only starting to talk about Cavalry, but you know how good they've been recently. Again, I think if you're Stephen Hart, you have to be mostly pleased with what you saw from your side this week.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you play these 2 games in a row and you definitely want at least something out of this road trip, and they got it. They got the win in Edmonton, which was by no means easy. So again, I think there's definitely a lot of progress there. That game in Calgary, it's always going to be a tough one against probably the most informed team in the league at the moment, as we're probably going to get to. The Halifax midfield was really good. They had Andre Rampersad for that game, which they didn't have in Edmonton, which you can kind of see makes such a massive difference for this club. Halifax have often been a team that play Cavalry difficult at Spruce Meadows. You know, they're the two teams in the league that play on grass. I think is probably important to that kind of dynamic. But again, you know, I think Halifax, they'll want to maybe improve on those set pieces and things like that. But otherwise, there's a lot of progress in how this team is looking at the moment versus how they looked maybe a month ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the Cavalry side of things, if you're watching the show, you see on the screen right now just their latest their latest player to really come out of the woodwork and start playing well, and that is young Arabin Pepel, obviously a player who, you know, spent time in Spain, had a whole bunch of trials, had quite the trip across Europe with trialing with several clubs before playing with Getafe's U19s for a short amount of time, and now back in the Canadian Premier League and back in the goals in a massive way. Let's hear from Arabim after that match against Halifax.
So yeah, the goal, once I kind of saw it come over my head, me and my dad always talk about you just try and find space in the box. So I knew potentially, because with Choco and even Mason, those guys are big guys, so they're always looking to head it back across. And then when it came back, it was kind of just instinct, just hit it, and thankfully it went in. And then the bicycle kick, just playing in the backyard with my brother, you're always trying stupid things, so the confidence is flowing, and I don't know if it was even close. I couldn't really see, but I said, let me just try it, so yeah.
Arabin Pepel almost made Charlie wear his bike helmet on the show this week. There was also some debates about the Walter Ponce goal between Cavalry and Valor as to whether that was a bicycle kick, but
we'll get to that.
We will get to that. I think the main thing, though, is this is another player for Cavalry who's stepped up and is getting goals. And I think at this point in the season, I think depth is really starting to win out in the Canadian Premier League. We're looking at sides like Atletico Ottawa, who I think, honestly, in some ways are also getting very lucky injury-wise and have been solid in that way, but have shown a lot of depth. Forge, obviously, Cavalry. And then you're looking at sides like Pacific and York, who might have slipped a little bit. Again, unlucky on the injury side, but haven't been able to quite play up to their standard with a couple of key guys out. I think that's really where we're getting at this stage in the season.
Yeah, I think it is. And you look at Cavalry, and they're a team that actually has been battered by some bigger injuries. You know, Tom Field, Anthony Novak, Joe DiChiara, all kind of going down before the season even really starts. And then they've had other players that, you know, haven't been able to you know, play every match or start every match. Even Sergio Camargo is working his way back, and we know how talented a player he is. But they've still managed to get results with the players that they have. And not only that, but they're able to bring on difference makers later in games as well, which has really fallen in their favor a lot, because it's not something that every CPL team is able to do at the moment. And you know, Tommy Wheeldon Jr. kind of spoke about it after, you know, the Valor game. We're not necessarily on that yet, but he spoke about how they put two different kind of attacking structures forward with similar personnel, but in different places, right? Joe Mason plays as a 10 against Halifax. He's got Pepel in front of him as a 9. And then the next game against Valor, Joe Mason's up front and Pepel's on the wing, right? So they've got all these different options with the same players because they're just flexible. And I think that's going to go a long way for this team as well.
Yeah, certainly will. And I know you're trying to jump ahead, but let's hear from Tommy Wheeldon Jr. after the Halifax match this week.
It's not a bad embarrassment of riches, is it? They're like these dolls that no matter who you put up there, they're scoring. So if it was a golden boot on shared goals, I think we'd have it. But what it does is it keeps Maya Bevan, who's sat in the stands today, keeps him hungry. You know, Joe Mason played a deeper role for us today because that's what the team needed and did smashing. Could have had one himself. And Arabim's just confident. So as coaches, it makes our life easier. You go with the ones on confident, and he had a terrific performance. But I think beyond just his goals, I think his general play was impressive today as well.
I'm not going to lie. I still don't understand his dolls analogy there, but
the nesting doll, I don't really.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. There you go.
I don't get how it applies. I know what he's referring to, but I don't.
Yeah. At any rate, what I do understand is how great Cavalry's been lately, and another win again last night against Valor. And this was a really entertaining game. One where, I mean, early on, it looked like Cavalry were gonna really run away with this. I mean, they had a goal very early. Elliot Simmons hit the post, and it looked like this was going to get ugly.
Yeah.
And in some ways it was, but at least Valor, they have a couple of nice goals as well to their name as well.
Yeah, I don't think Valor will be too thrilled with coming out of it with good goals, but still losing 4-2. Yeah, it looked like it did have the capacity to get kind of ugly in the early stages. Even Cavalry tweeting out, we just need 6 more for another 8-0, which was as maybe ambitious, but yes, very funny. Yeah, it's just Cavalry's efficiency, which we spoke about them last year as a team that was inefficient with the ball and in attack. They'd get to that attacking third and they'd run out of ideas. It would end up in kind of a weaker cross or kind of it would go out of harm's way, miss the net, go straight into the keeper's arms or something. This year, it seems like they're a little bit more ruthless. They've got more of that killer instinct with those players in the attack. But I think maybe the main number one thing, and probably the thing that made the difference in this game, is just the set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the 2 games we're talking about, they've scored 5 goals and 4 of them come from set piece plays, right? And Tommy, every time we ask, he shouts out Leon Hapgood, who's the assistant coach who is clearly in charge of that this year. So all the credit in the world to him. And it's, it helps with how confident these Cavalry players are at the moment that they can pull off these maybe more elaborate routines where you've got Jose Escalante delivering it to a specific player and he's looking to play it into the path of another guy making the right run. We've got things like Joe Mason hiding offside on, I think it was the 4th goal for Cavalry here, and he comes just onside by the time the ball is struck, so he can flick it over the top to Arab and Peppel. It's just so impressive, the kind of different things that they can show from those dead ball routines. So just really, if you are a team playing Cavalry, I would strongly advise not fouling them anywhere on the pitch or giving them a single corner. Much easier said than done, but at this point, it's just ruthless how they're able to just kill you in so many ways from those dead balls.
Yeah, Stephen Hart spoke about that before his match against Cavalry, saying, we'd love to limit their opportunities in dead ball situations, but that's just so hard to do over the course of games. So teams are going to have to really prepare and find other ways to do that. But you mentioned Leon Hapgood shoutouts. Let's hear another one. Why not from Tommy Wilson Jr.
Like I said, whether it's the attacking, the way we're playing and building the ball out, to whether we're defending our pressing, I was really happy with. And then the set plays are just the ice on the cake. What it shows to us now is every part of our game the guys are committing to. And, again, credit to Leon Hapgood, who's been working on that stuff and just having a few maverick plays. And like I said, the boys are feeling confident. So anytime they put the ball down, it's a great opportunity. And yeah, we like it. It gives us different ways to score goals.
Cavalry, of course, now tying a club record for most consecutive undefeated games with 7. They'll obviously have a chance to continue that going forward, and no evidence to think they won't. But speaking of records, a big one for the Canadian Premier League this week is 6 players with Canadian Premier League or on Canadian Premier League rosters, 2 more with Canadian Premier League ties called up to the Canada U20 side. Charlie, just how big is that for the league and its exposure at this point?
Oh, it's awesome! It's awesome. I think we should probably just name them all to give them credit.
Players. That would have been a good
we got
thing
Lowell,
to do,
Wright.
sure.
Obviously, we've spoken about at York. There's Matt Catavolo at Valor. Cam Habibullah from Pacific. He's obviously on loan there from the Whitecaps. Jean-Aniel Assis in Cavalry. He's on loan from Montreal. And then Forge have 2 guys in Kwesi Poku and Dino Bontis. And I think that's 6. Right? I don't think I'm missing anybody.
No.
And if I am, I'm sure I'll hear about it fairly quickly. But yeah, just these are all players that, a lot of them have ties to former Canadian youth national team setups. They play, under 17s, under 16s, whatever. They've been to camps and things like that. But at the end of the day, the fact that Canada is looking to the CPL for these kinds of camps, and they're able to call on these players who are in professional environments playing, high quality games against, pro teams rather than development teams week in and week out. It's just a massive game changer for this system. I think, Mitch, you wrote something about this the other day, but I think it was Bobby Smirniotis who spoke a bit about how, these under 20 teams, these youth teams used to come from 3 places and that would be pretty much the 3 MLS academies in Canada, and they'd be players who really hadn't played a lot of actual games heading into it, right? But when you've got the CPL to call, and obviously there's a lot of talent coming in from European-based clubs as well, which is also, a massive improvement and a good sign. But to have these CPL options to call on, even for MLS teams to loan players to get those kind of professional minutes, it's only good things for the Canadian youth team and the future of the national team, right?
Yeah, Bobby did mention that as well. Like just the diversity of different players coming in from so many different environments. You still have the MLS guys who are obviously still going to be important, and we're certainly not discounting those academies and their importance. But you've got these Canadian Premier League guys who, again, have these pro minutes. And I mean, if you're looking at a guy like Kwesi Boku, he's had the CONCACAF experience. He's played at Estadio Azteca. That kind of little thing is critical in matches, down in Honduras. We saw earlier this week some of the challenges that those matches can present. So the more experience you have in those sort of ways is absolutely huge. And is there a player in particular of this group that you're really looking at in terms of having a big tournament?
Well, it's probably Lowell, but we've spoken about him a lot. He's very talented. As we've said, he's got so much professional experience at his age, which is remarkable. Cameron Habibullah is a very talented technical player as well, who I think is going to play a big role for this team. And Catavolo as well has a lot of experience with other youth national team setups. But I think maybe the main thing here is that like all of these guys are going to get an opportunity at this tournament. This is not a massive squad, and every single player I think is going to have to play a role, because when you look at the schedule, Canada, they play Cuba on Saturday, they play the US on the Monday, and then they play St. Kitts on the Wednesday. That's a game every 2 days in the group stage of a knockout tournament. Like, you need every player to play a role in that period. So I think everybody's going to get a chance. The CPL players in particular, most of them, they probably have more experience playing games on short turnarounds than some of the academy players, right? Who maybe haven't just played as many games, period, recently. So that's going to be massive. And I think it's going to be important for Mauro Biello, the coach, to call on all of these guys. And because, there's not a lot of margin for error either in this tournament, because you need to, get through to that knockout stage. You obviously want to get to the semifinals and then to the finals to qualify for the Under-20 World Cup and then the Olympics. So not a lot of margin for error, but the games come so thick and fast that every player is going to be important.
Yeah, I thought a great point from Angus as well earlier on the knock-on effect of how important this tournament is, where, it's not just the U20 guys and the opportunity that they would all have to then go to a World Cup. It's also that next generation, the U23s, and obviously an Olympic Games I think would be massive for the men's side. I've said this for a lot of years, like especially in the kind of casual soccer fandom in Canada. Like, Canadians understand the Olympics. We've obviously seen the incredible things that our women's side has done with 3 straight medals and obviously gold at this past Olympics, and just to have a men's side there as well would increase the visibility by so much. So this is a massive tournament for Canada soccer, and obviously great for our league that so many of those players, are representing it. But I think we'll start to wrap things up here and look ahead to the weekend, where 3 games in the Canadian Premier League. York, as we talked about with Angus, they're hosting Pacific on Saturday at 4 p.m. And then a doubleheader on Sunday as Forge travel to Wanderers Ground, where they'll play HFX, looking to avenge, HFX will be, of course, looking to avenge that 4-0 drubbing last time the Hamilton team came to town. And evidently that's that's something that's pretty rare at the Wanderers Ground. So that we find that again. Then, of course, Atletico Ottawa, they're traveling to Edmonton. So another opportunity for them to continue their streak, add that to 6 unbeaten in the league. All of those games, of course, available on One Soccer, as will the U20 games as well. Just want to mention that. Make sure to get that in, because obviously I think myself, Charlie, and all of you will be tuning into those big games, as we mentioned, for the program. And let's finish up by looking at the standings here. And obviously, as we said, Cavalry at the top, Pacific Atletico Ottawa and Forge making up the other playoff spots as it is right now. Halifax just outside right now, and that's a big game for them. They'll want to be pushing Forge for that 4 spot, and then Valor, a bit of a slip as we mentioned from York United as they've obviously not been able to score in their last 5, and Edmonton still looking for that first win, but it's coming. It's got to be coming.
Surely
in the league. But let's wrap things up here. And thank you so much again for Angus McNabb joining us from New York, where we'll have more news on later on the podcast and later on at CanPL.ca about all the happenings there with the FIFA World Cup. Thanks to Benedict Rhodes and Alex Gonge-Ruzic. A lot of exciting stuff coming up this week, as we mentioned, the games, the World Cup venues, the U20s, the Canadian Championship quarterfinals as well in the next little bit.
Semifinals.
Yeah, semifinals as well in the next little bit. So make sure to head over to CanPL.ca. We'll have full coverage on that. On behalf of Charlie O'Connor-Clark and the entire CanPL.ca newsroom, have a great weekend, everyone, and enjoy the games.
Drifts towards Yao. Heads it across. Pebble! What a finish! Forge still moving forward. It's Ashton Morgan in close! Here's one Yao looking for Burgess! It's 2! Deflected! What a stop from Ingham! And the finish from West Mateo! There's the pass. The post at the back is where we find Sam Salter. That's a pretty good ball. It's on Salter! What a finish that is!
There's a strike from well out from Sergio Camargo. Headed down Bullseye with an acrobatic shot. It's off the foot of Mason Trafford and into the back of the net. Valor with a chance here, and it's into the back of the net.